What's up, passionate Pokemon players? I'm Ryan, and we're here for another episode of the Hawks Pokemon Nest. Excited as usual. This time we are going to get another of our fun rogue decks. This week is Annihilape deck, mostly based on Annihilape, but also with appearances by Cornerstone Mask Ogerpon. So we will go over each card in the deck, why I included it, what it does, and then we'll go through the strategies of how to play the deck, including the strengths and weaknesses of it, and then we'll end on some other cards to consider swapping in and out of the deck. So, without further ado, let's get into what we came to do. And first off, we got the Pokemon in the deck. We've got Annihilape, is who this deck is mostly built around, but you're also going to be attacking and having your Cornerstone Mask Ogerpon in the active a lot. But let's see what this Annihilape does. It's a super interesting card, one I've been really wanting to build a deck around for quite some time. So Annihilape, it's a stage 2 Pokemon. It's a newer evolution of Primeape, which, as you all know, I love these old school Pokemon, and Annihilape is just such a cool Pokemon. I really like this one a lot. It's one of my favorites of the newer generation that comes from olders. So anyway, this one is a cool one, right? So Tantrum, for 1 energy, does 130 damage, and now it makes this Pokemon confused, right? So solid damage for 1 attack makes him confused, but we can solve that with a special energy that we'll talk about later. Now this one is really, it's kind of crazy move, I guess, if there's no other way to call it, right? Destined Fight for 2 energy, both active Pokemon are knocked out. So this is what you're going to be using against these 2 prize Pokemon. So it is a 1 for 2 prize card, but if you are just using this bad boy only, and you can just find ways to get boss up your opponent's Pokemon and just one-shot them, then you're going to take 6 prizes with 2 before they can take 1. And really, if they do decide to just throw up these 1 prize Pokemon inactive, 130 is a solid amount of damage that you can usually knock them out in a turn or 2, and a lot of times their 1 prizes aren't going to be hitting you. So anyway, let's start from the beginning with all of the Pokemon here. Now here's the other one that this deck is built around, and it gives some really good flexibility. While you don't want to be attacking with this bad boy unless you have to, or not necessarily unless you have to, but unless they can't attack, you know, then he can hang out in your active, and you're really going to want to put him out of active in order to not be for your opponent to take 2 prizes. Sorry. Alright, so Cornerstone Mask Ogerpon, right? So this is why he's in the deck, is his ability. Cornerstone Stance. Prevent all damage from attacks done to this Pokemon by your opponent's Pokemon that have an ability. So really good, and we see so many Pokemon now have ability. When I'm playing online, it's like almost every match. Like, I actually find myself sometimes using this guy a little more than I want. I mean, I really built the deck around Annihilape, and honestly, like, the strategy I wanted to use was just stall out a little bit with Cornerstone Stance as I get my Annihilapes ready. But sometimes I'm finding that, hey, you know what? Their entire deck has Pokemon that have abilities. I'm just going to leave him inactive and just slowly whittle them down, right? Then we have Demolish, which does 140. It does cost 3 energy. But this attack's damage isn't affected by weakness or resistance or any effects on your opponent's active Pokemon. So basically what this means is it does 140 no matter what. So it makes it really consistent in that regards. Like, you're not going to take out anything in 1 hit. You're going to take out a lot of Pokemon in 2, and some of those big stage 2 Pokemon is going to take 3, but you know, by then that's okay, because they're a lot of times not even able to hit you. So it's a really nice one. It only takes 1 you only need 1 ground energy, and then you can have 2 others. Obviously, you're pretty much going to want to do your best to use the ground or earth energies on it, but you know, it gives you a little flexibility. All right, so let's go through the others. Then we have Mankey. I just went with this one. Honestly, you can pretty much go with any Mankey. There's no real one that I think is better than another that much. I mean, I guess if I was in a pinch and I used Dual Chop, I can do 20 damage max. I don't know. There's really whatever one you want, to be honest. I don't have a preference. Then Primeape. I did go with this one over other ones for some reasons. I really like the Rant and Rave Does do 40 damage for 1 energy in a pinch. This Pokemon is now confused. What he also does too is kind of, you've got 40 damage, and then if he survives another turn, and then you do 130 damage if you can evolve him. A lot of times that's going to take out some of those non-EX Pokemon. Now this Pokemon is now confused, just like the Tantrum, right, which does a lot more. But again, I'll demo soon that we've got our, I'll just spoil it now, Therapeutic Energies, where we're going to run 4 of these Therapeutic Energies to get around this confusion that they both have with using both of those attacks. Back to him real quick, Raging Smash. I'm never going to use that move. I'll just be honest right now. You're never gonna use that move because it costs 3 energy, and we're not loading him up because when he's evolved into Annihilape, you don't need any more than 2 energy on him, and you're not going to want to put those because you want to be loading those up onto your other Pokemon, whether it's your Cornerstone Mask or obviously other Annihilapes in its evolutions, right? Okay, then we've got Fezandipiti. I threw in one. I really, it's kind of a trademark you're going to see if you haven't noticed in a decent amount of my decks. Is Fezandipiti is a solid one to go with when I kind of have room in the deck for 1 extra card. I feel like I did here, so I threw in the Fezandipiti, a solid one just to throw on your bench because of Flip the Script. It just gives me a good draw engine, and as we know, we're gonna be knocking out a lot. The one thing to notice about this guy is, remember, once during your turn, if any of your Pokemon were knocked out during your opponent's last turn, draw 3 cards. So don't misplay and think that you're gonna draw cards when you KO yourself with Annihilape, right? Destined Fight, both active or knocked out. So if you knock yourself out, this is on your turn. If your opponent doesn't knock out another Pokemon on their next turn, which hopefully they don't because they're going to probably put up the Ogerpon mask, then, you know, it's not going to work. Then from there, the technical draw engine here, if I can fit my fingers in here, draw engine, in quotation marks, is going to be the Hoothoot and Noctowl. So we're going to play 3 of each, 3 of each of them for Jewel Seeker so that we can go and get 2 trainer cards and put them into our hand. Any 2 trainer cards, we should always have a Cornerstone Mask on our bench. I am only playing with 2, so if they do somehow both get prized, it's really going to give this deck a hard time. So if you really want to and you think, you know what, I don't need the Fezandipiti and throw in 3 Cornerstone Masks, up to you. But I find that this kind of works. It's been really working out for me in this deck. Now let's go through the trainer cards in the deck. As usual, we've got our Buddy-Buddy Poffins. I've put 4 of them because it's super important to swarm this bench with Hoothoots and obviously with our Mankeys so that we can get them into Annihilapes. Then we've got Nest Balls. I threw 3 Nest Balls in there just to really make sure and give me the best chance I can to get my Cornerstone Mask out there. We need him up there. And then, of course, you've got extras for a Fezandipiti. You're usually not going to want to put more than 1 on your bench of the Cornerstone Mask at one time. It's up to you. Your opponent can potentially just knock him out. So, you know, you got enough bench spots. It's only 1 retreat cost. It's up to you. Night Stretcher. I've got 4 Night Stretchers. That's my only other trainer card that I have 4 of. You know, as we know, Night Stretchers are important, especially when our deck is really based around 1 prizers that we only can put 4 max in. So you really want to get those Night Stretchers, right? Now the A spec I went back and forth a little bit, but settled for the tried and true Prime Catcher, right? Switching in one of your opponent's bench to the active, and you switch one of yours from bench to active. I'll talk about some other ones to consider later on. I've actually got a couple others to think about, but we're going with Prime Catcher. Just feels like it does the most for me. Rare Candies, 3 Rare Candies. We want to get our Annihilapes evolved and out as soon as possible. Note that and if you didn't notice up there, I did go with 2 of those Primeapes as well, so we're not relying just on, especially because I'm not playing any Arven or anything that really lets us get item cards super easily, except for the Noctowl, and a lot of times you may not want to get him. So I went 3 Rare Candies, 2 Primeapes. Okay, then we've got Switch. Did throw in 2 Switch cards. You know, occasionally your opponent's going to try to trap your Noctowl inactive, or your Cornerstone Mask. The good thing is all of the Pokemon just have 1 retreat cost, so it does make it relatively easy. But just to make it even easier, I threw in 2 Switch cards. Right. Then we've got Ultra Ball, 3 Ultra Balls, tried and true. Area 0 Underdepths, I think 3 of them in there. I think it's really important to get Area 0 Underdepths out just to make it easier to continuously evolve our Hoothoots and our Noctowls, as well as be able to have enough space for our Fezandipiti, our Cornerstone Mask, and all of our Mankey Primeape Annihilapes on bench. So I think it's really important to get this one out there, right? Then Boss's Orders, of course, we want that. We've got 3 Boss's Orders in there, and then we've got the Prime Catcher, so in essence, we've got 4 of them, right? Then Iono, so this one's like our pseudo draw engine of the deck. Sometimes I get a little bit annoyed because I can draw fewer, so maybe one to think about would be like a Judge, honestly, in this deck over the Iono, because it gives us a little bit more consistency. But I do feel like the early start with Iono is better. You know, later on we are starting to get a little bit more set up, so I'm gonna go with Iono. I threw in 3 Iono. Now in terms of energy, just threw those up on the bottom of the screen in addition to our trainers. We've got Therapeutic Energy, 4 of them. Now what this one is, as long as it's attached to a Pokemon, it provides just a colorless energy. The Pokemon it's attached to recovers from being asleep, confused, paralyzed, and can't be affected by those special conditions. So obviously I'm throwing that one on there in order to account for our Annihilape getting confused, so that way it can pretty much freely use Tantrum if needed for 1 energy without confusing itself. So I really like that. Then notice here Rant and Rave as well, because a lot of times, you know, I am going ahead if I notice that my opponent's not loaded up and they're not going to knock him out next turn. Why take a prize card when I can usually go 260 in 2 turns and hopefully knock their opponent's Pokemon out, especially if they're wanting to go, oh, you know what, I'm not going to go 1 for 1, 2 for 1 with my EXs. Tantrum is going to knock out a lot of them unless they're throwing up some stage 2 1 prizers. We're gonna do some good damage. So that one really works there. Then from there, obviously, we just have 8 of the basic ground energy. So a grand total of 12 energy in here. Is it too much? I don't think so. You could potentially go down to 10 and maybe add in a couple other cards. But I really like this. I think it's been working out for me. Let's think about some other cards to consider in this deck, swapping in or out, would be the Earthen Vessel. That's one I really considered, and maybe even if you want to go down and just use 6 energies, 6 ground energies, you may just throw in some Earthen Vessels, as obviously you can just snag the ground energies with them. Maybe putting in 2, take out 2, throw in 2 Earthen Vessels, and maybe take out something else so you can have 3. I don't know. I usually am a really big fan of them because they obviously thin your deck out and are consistent, but I don't know what I would necessarily always discard from my hand. I do have trouble doing so, so this is one of the few decks where I'm not using Earthen Vessels. Kind of in a similar vein as the Professor's Research, I do find myself really struggling sometimes. The biggest weakness and the biggest reason I'm losing matches is getting stuck with bad hands. And sometimes Iono, when we get into mid and late game and I get into 3 or less prizes, can really be a struggle to close out games, because now I'm Ionoing out of a bad hand into a 3, 2, or 1 card hand, and it gives my opponent the chance to catch up. Or, you know, if we are already close in terms of prizing, then they've got the draw power a lot of times to close it out. So it makes me consider the Professor's Research, and I've almost put it in over the Iono, but I just can't, because again, like, discarding cards is really hard in this deck. I find that I really need a lot, except for obviously maybe the Poffins when we're getting up there. So I didn't, but it may be one to think about and seeing if there's a way to get around this, maybe throwing in some Super Rods or something to get the energies back. Something to think about. Maybe Super Rods over the Night Stretchers and then Researcher over Iono. Could be something to, you know, test out. Let me know what you think in the comments if you're going to do that and how it went. Now, the other 3 are just ace specs that I'd consider. I think overall this deck it works well. There's not a lot that would really improve it as is. So then we've got Amulet of Hope, I think is a solid one, right? You attach to the Pokemon, search for up to 3 cards. When it gets knocked out, put them into our turn. But the biggest thing that really messes with the like knocked out, and it actually eliminated a couple other ace specs, is that it has to be damage from an attack from your opponent's Pokemon. So it's like, oh man, you're really gonna have to sacrifice not using not using Destined Fight if you're going to attach it to your Annihilape in order for this to work, because he knocks himself out. It also kind of had the Legacy Energy as one too, but that one I feel like works even worse than this, because maybe you're just going to, you know, let him get knocked out or attach it to somebody who you know is going to get knocked out before attacking, but it doesn't quite work. Here's another one that's good. Similarly there, you know, maybe you're going to use, instead of that Destined Fight, you attach the Bomb, and this makes it a little bit better in terms of just go ahead and using your 1-cost attack of, shoot, I already forgot what it's called. Tantrum, where we're going to deal 130. Our opponent knocks them out next turn, and now it does 12, you throw 12 damage counters on them. It can stop you from getting an extra prize taken. Now, remember, the one thing about Destined Fight is your both Pokemon are knocked out during your turn. So if your opponent does knock out another Pokemon on their next turn, then now we've kind of just done a 2 for 2. So this is why the Deluxe Bomb can prevent that. You know, we're hitting for 130. They're going to knock him out next turn and take another 120 damage. Hopefully they're knocked out. So it's one to think about. I still don't think I would go with it, right? Here's probably the best one to think about is the Precious Trolley. Considering we're using the Area 0 Underdepths, then maybe you're going to throw on the Precious Trolley and then just max out that bench with 3 Hoothoots and 4 of our Mankeys. And then obviously it's a basic Pokemon, so you can get your Fezandipiti as well, or maybe even another Teal Mask Ogerpon, who knows. So this one is really one to think about, because we do have a lot of basics that we want to get on bench, but I honestly still think that, unfortunately, as much as I want to go like for the obvious A spec, I think that Prime Catcher is just the way to go here. Well, that is going to do it for this episode of the Hawks Pokemon Nest. Hope you enjoyed this deck. Make sure that you stay tuned for our next episode at the end of the week on Fridays, every Friday, where we go and test our rogue decks on the TCG Live. So we're going to really put this one to the test. I've done really well with it. I've went on some win streaks. I reached the Masters League with this deck recently, as well as I slowly work my way up the ladder with all of these rogue decks. So we did hit Masters. We'll see if we can, during the testing, move up and get a few more above on the Masters too, because, you know, that's always fun. We've only got, at the time of recording this, we're 5 days from the ladder ending, and we've got, and then that rotation will also happen at that time. So you'll see against some non-post rotation decks, but that's okay. So anyway, if you liked what you saw, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you can become part of the Hawks Nest. Fabulous flock of fearless folks who love to do what we love. I love making these rogue decks and testing them out, so I hope to be able to do that for a long time, and any subscriber helps me get closer to that goal of being able to do this full time. So I appreciate you all. I appreciate your views and all of that. And now, if you're not quite ready to fly yet, sorry, just hit that like button. We'll show up in an algorithm near you in the near future. But until then, we'll see you next time.